I got stood up the other night. Testing. Testing one, two, three. Let's get unbothered.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Thai Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Thai Rivera. I'm your host, Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, no edits, but I gotta do something really quick. Do not disturb. Okay, sorry to do that to everybody. I usually remember, and when I move my hat like that, it's gonna make a little bit of noise, but I'm trying to like adjust it so that I'm in frame the way that I need to be. I put my microphone right here on my ear, well, on my hat near my ear, because I bought these microphones. They're wireless microphones, and they're actually really good. They're actually really good quality. They're what everybody uses. That's why they have that little fuzzy thing, and that's usually what's inside that little microphone holder that I use. That's not actually a microphone. It's just a little holder that these things clip into, and then I can do like on the street interviews if I want to, or stuff like that, and then it's connected to my phone, so the sound comes out really good. When I do my other videos, that is a camera setup, but we're not here to talk about that. But I did figure out a cool way to set my sound up into my camera, and I'm pretty proud of a lot of the way that I figured out technology. And sometimes I am slow on the uptake, but it's usually not about being actually dumb, even though a part of my brand is being dumb. And I very much do accept that. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not at all insecure about it. I know that sometimes people really think that I'm dumb, and that has been a really helpful defense mechanism throughout my life, and it's also been very helpful in keeping me from doing a lot of stuff that I didn't want to do. Because if I just pretend like I'm dumb and I don't know how to do things, people do them for me. And so it's fun, though, in a way, to have people think that you're dumb. And it's not something that I really have to put on or I have to work towards. I just have dumb guy energy. And also, I know that one of the things that I do, just as a consequence of the way that I was raised, is I do kind of completely blank out when I'm supposed to pay attention to somebody. And we're going to get to the part where we talk about me being stood up for sure. So anybody that's thinking like I tried to bait and switch you, we're going to get there. But I'll just, there's some that needs to be set up. And that's one of the things that I like about doing Unbothered is I don't have to worry about editing it. I am going to start dropping in little visuals here and there though, so people can see what I'm talking about at different points. But I'm not going to edit it. I don't want to start editing Unbothered because I feel like this is my chance to give you guys like the real me unedited. Like you guys are getting it uncensored and like, but with the shorter videos, it has to be like that. Because sometimes I do get long-winded and sometimes I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really belong there. Or that's a story for another day. And it's not about me feeling like that story was too personal or whatever. Sometimes it just doesn't go with the rest of the theme. But the only way to get the really good stuff in my short videos is by letting myself kind of just go where I need to go at different points. And there are parts that I definitely do write down. You know, there is some scripting involved, sometimes heavily scripted, because I know that there are certain bits of information that I have to get in. The other day, somebody mentioned that they would like to see me put more of the text up from the sources that I pull from. And I will make it a point to do that. But on the times that I don't, you guys are just going to have to trust me. And if you want to, go to the publication or Google the exact words that I say. Because anytime that I say I'm going to read a quote to you, I'm definitely reading a quote to you. So if you're ever that curious about whether or not that information that I'm giving you is true, I don't feel at all uncomfortable or weird about you guys checking my work and even searching those exact words in that exact order that I've read to you. And then verifying and maybe even reading the rest of the article so you see for yourself where it is I'm pulling the information from. But what I was trying to get at is I know that there's always been this idea that I was dumb. And I realized that when I'm really trying to pay attention to someone, I look especially dumb because I'll completely try to blank out like anything that might be going on in my head. Because one thing that I find very interesting about a way that I trained my brain when I was very young was I remember when the Iran Contra scandal was going on. So I'm dating myself, but I've told you guys I'm Gen X, so this should make sense. But I remember when that was going on. And I remember that Oliver North, there was a point where Oliver North just kept saying, I can't recall, I can't recall, I can't recall. And it was kind of a famous line or a part. And so I asked my dad, not knowing anything about what's going on, I asked my dad, I was like, why does he keep saying, I can't recall? And my dad was like, well, because he's under oath and he's got to answer these questions. But if you can't recall, then you just can't recall. And I was like, so he can't get in trouble because he doesn't recall? And my dad was like, no, if you don't recall, then you don't recall. So I remembered that and it stuck with me. It's weird the things that stick with me, but it really stuck with me. And so I trained my brain at a point, because at a point I saw the way that my life was going. And none of this is at all attributable to the fact that I'm Latino or the fact that I'm gay or my family's economic standing when I was younger. Like so many people attribute like the things I say to that. And you know, because I'm very honest about the fact that like I was a sex worker for a long time. And a lot of times, and I was talking about this a couple days ago with a friend of mine that might actually end up doing an episode with me because she was a sex worker as well. And I really, really like this woman. I sent her a message the other day saying, do you know why I like you? And then she said, why? And I sent back, because sometimes it's just nice to talk to another whore that gets it. Because once you've been an actual sex worker, and I mean an actual one, because, you know, there's people that kind of dip their toe in those waters or will like get a sugar daddy, which a sugar daddy is valid as far as sex work goes, but just one doesn't really make you a sex worker. You know, I mean, it's fine. I'm not trying to, but it's like everything else. You know how they say there's levels to this. And my friend was talking to me the other day when I mentioned that to her and asking me why I don't tell more stories like that on my YouTube. And one of the reasons that I don't tell more stories about that is because I feel like there's a lot of room for people to judge you, because if they haven't necessarily lived in that world, then they don't really understand it. And to them, a lot of it sounds shady, and it is shady. But you know, just to relate to you guys the way that my life started going, because I don't want to get caught up on sex work, because I could talk about that forever. And when I'm around other people that have done that kind of work, whether they're strippers, escorts, whatever they are, I can really talk with them forever. And one thing I really love, because there's the ones that'll try to be like, you know, oh, I was making $100,000 a day. And you're like, okay, no, you weren't. All right. I mean, like, I don't doubt that you had $100,000 day. I don't doubt that you had $100,000 trick. But when they start saying these ridiculous numbers and they're talking like that was every day, that's not the way that it works in most cases. Like, I was a true moneymaker as far as the guys goes, because that's the other thing people won't tell you. There is levels to that too. Like, girls and trans women make the absolute most money in the world when it comes to sex work. That's just what it is. Guys, like in a lot of cases, we will make significantly less than the girls do. And I was very lucky because there wasn't another Latino that fit my description. And before I changed myself at all, before I had any plastic surgery at all, I was very much like stereotypically, almost you could say, what a cute Latino boy should look like. Like, that was just, And that's not me tooting my own horn or anything. It's just what it was. And so, and there wasn't a single other, for like several years when I was doing it, there wasn't a single other working Latino male escort in Las Vegas, especially that fit, like, because I was smaller and I was young and I looked even younger than my actual age. And so, but my point was, I noticed a couple years before that the way that my life was going. Well, years and years before that, technically. I probably noticed when I was about 16 years old. 15. Yeah, it was definitely 15. Was when I noticed, because I had these friends that would, crack cars was what they would call it. And they were gangbangers, and they were a Phoenix gang specific. Everything moved fast for me as soon as I got to Phoenix. Like, that's what people don't really understand. I was already living fast in the town that I grew up in. I was hanging out with people that were much older than us when I was in high school and towards the end of junior high. And there was a point where my parents understood that I was gonna be a boy. I'm a boy. And so I had more freedom as far as being able to not really have a curfew or a really late curfew. Okay, I don't know if that counts as an edit, but what happened was my camera just ran out of memory. My phone just ran out of memory. And so I had to delete the stuff that I had in my recently deleted, and I just forgot. But what I was getting at is I really didn't have a curfew, right? And so since I didn't really have a curfew, things moved really fast for me. And like I told you guys, I started drinking when I was like 13, started smoking cigarettes when I was like 12. And so I was living fast, right? And then I get to Phoenix and I still feel somewhat sheltered because I had come from a small town. But we moved to West Phoenix, which West Phoenix is known for gang life and stuff like that. Or that's what it was known for when I was younger. It still is, if you ask me, but just gangs aren't as popular. But it is kind of like that typical Latino / Chicano lifestyle where it's, guys, when I was younger, guys would be stealing cars, and there were a lot of gangs. And so I got like hooked up with this gang and even got jumped in at a point, and but at first I didn't even realize I was hanging out with gangbangers, and I've told that story before. Like when I got hit with the bullet in the drive-by, that was when I first found out that I was hanging out with gangbangers, because I asked them but they told me no, that they weren't a gang or in a gang. And then when that all happened, I guess that's kind of why they decided to level with me, because, the effects of who I was hanging out with had really, at that point, caught up with me. There was no lying about it, like I had been hit with a bullet when I had just gone to finish a keg. Like really, I just got a phone call and they were like, hey, we're finishing up a keg over at so-and-so's house. Do you want to come over? And I was like, yeah. And I was so stupid and childish that I got a Thirst Buster on my way over. Well, like a 32-ounce drink from the drive-through liquor store on the corner of 59th and Thomas, I think it was 59th and Thomas, or maybe it's 59th and Indian School. But anyway, if you're from the area, if you know, you know. And so I went to that liquor store right there, the drive-through liquor store, and I bought a soda. And so I had the big cup, and I finished my soda because I just actually wanted a soda. And then when I got there, that's what I was using as my cup for the beer from the keg. And so I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden that happens. And so, and then I decided that I just wanted to hang out with them because I liked them. They were cool guys. They were fun. And we would do fun stuff together. And it wasn't always like gangbanger activity. They weren't what I would call like heavy gangbangers, even though there were those parts of it. There were, like, there was a guy named Ephraim, was his name, Ephraim. And he is in prison for the rest of his life. And that was one of the guys that would come and hang out with us the most. But a lot of times he would go do his dirt somewhere else. And one time, Ephraim, or not one time, there were a couple of times where Ephraim, because I had a car, asked me to meet him at the river bottom. And what he would do was he would steal a car, he would crack it. Like, the reason they call it cracking is because they take a screwdriver, they crack the steering column, which this doesn't work on new cars, but they would crack the steering column, and then they would take that same screwdriver, stick it into the ignition, and then start the car up that way. So it was from cracking the steering column that they called it that they called it cracking. And so he would go crack cars, and so a couple of times he had me meet him out at the river bottom, and the guys that I was with knew how to get there. And this was back in the days of pagers and payphones is the way that everything used to get done. And so, he would call from a payphone near the river bottom and let whoever we were hanging out with know to get a message to me that they wanted me to meet them at the river bottom, or meet him at the river bottom. And so, but at one point he went too far, obviously, and somebody came out when he was cracking a car, and he ended up, that person ended up losing their life. And that was after I had stopped hanging out with him, but it was pretty fresh after I had stopped hanging out with him. So it was still that scary moment that you have sometimes when you're younger, and you're like, oh, this is like serious. Like, I could possibly have been there and gotten in trouble with him just by association, because I would never do anything like that. Even when I was younger, that just wasn't my mindset. I wasn't a bad person. I just was dumb and thought like these things were fun, like hanging out with these people and the excitement when things like that would happen. And I guess by regular standards, it does seem kind of like it's pretty crazy. But by the standards or the ways that I was living at that time, it just seemed pretty normal. And then, but during that time is when I really started noticing that there were a lot of things that I probably didn't want to remember the details of. And so I trained my brain to not really pay attention to what was going on, or any conversation that seemed like it would be something that I shouldn't know if anybody ever came around asking. And I was never the person doing any of the dirt. I was never because I joke sometimes about my relationship with God, because sometimes, I half joke, but strangers will approach me, and because of my tattoos and the particular tattoos I have, strangers will approach me sometimes and try to win me over by talking about Jesus, because they think that my soul needs to be saved, that somewhere along the way I've lost my relationship with God. And the truth is, I never lost my relationship with God through any of the things that I've done throughout my life. I always had a strong, strong belief in God, even if I didn't trust or believe in religion, which is a lot of where I am now, even though I do still consider myself Catholic, and I do respect the fact that I was baptized Catholic and raised Catholic, and I did, all of my sacraments except for marriage, obviously. And so I'm very much a Catholic, and I will go to the Catholic Church every once in a while. I went a couple of times a couple of months ago, but that church just wasn't a good fit for me, the particular parish that I was going to. And so, my point is that sometimes I joke about that stuff, but it's like I never lost my relationship with God. Even when I was escorting, I would pray to God for more tricks, or for for them to move it along faster, or whatever it was I needed, I always prayed to God for. And when it came to drugs, even, like, sometimes people are like, I got on drugs and I lost my connection with God. And I'm like, well, why would you lose your connection when you're on drugs? Like, that makes no sense to me at all. I kept my relationship with God even through drugs, and I would pray to God for more drugs. And the way that God delivers My two best friends were actual dealers, like big time dealers, like the kind that like actual money and all the time, anything that I wanted. And some people would say that that's the devil at work, you know, that gave me those things. But I would say the complete opposite. Because while a lot of people would think that because you have access like that, because I had access to all of everything that I wanted, as far as anything that I was into when it came to substances. I could, and I wasn't, the only time I would pay for anything was if I didn't want to hang out with my friend that night, the best friend that was the dealer, which was genuinely my best friend to me. I realized later that I was a little more expendable to them, but also in hindsight, it should have been that way, because when it came down to it, I wasn't really true to their game. You know, I wasn't stupid. I didn't need them for anything. And so in that world, people need you to need them. And I didn't need them because I always knew I had access to money because I was escorting. And so I was making a lot of money. And I didn't have to worry about, like, you know, if I ever wanted to buy anything. Like I said, sometimes in my head, I feel like I don't want to put up with their mouth today. I don't want to listen to them talk. And it would be like my best friend. And so I would buy something off of them. I would be like, just give me this. And then I'd buy it off of them. But in a lot of cases, they wouldn't even sell it to me. They'd just give it to me and be like, here. I mean, like, so I did a lot of stuff when I was younger, but I paid for very, very little of it. Like, I would be surprised if in my entire partying career on substances that I spent $200. I would be honestly surprised if I spent even that much, because I just never had to pay for anything. But I was always getting it. And so the reason that I say that that was God that gave that to me was because I was able to do as much as you could possibly do and see exactly how high you can get. And once I realized how high I could get, I no longer had that curiosity anymore. And I'm no, obviously not a professional in these types of things, but I often wonder if a lot of other people that maybe dealt with addiction at points in their life, like that was kind of part of their problem, you know. And I'm not saying that I think this is it or I have it solved or whatever. I just sometimes do wonder, because I really think that did, like, it worked miracles for me. Because when you're trying to do something like that and all you can do is drool and you can't inhale anymore, like literally, like you can inhale, obviously you're alive, but you can't inhale to ingest whatever it is you're trying to ingest, that will kind of fix you in a way. You know, when you're able to do something until your nose bleeds, that will fix you in a lot of cases. And I know other people reach that point and don't realize it's rock bottom, but I never had to go to NA or anything like that. I went to NA before and I went to AA before. AA because I got a DUI and I had to go as a term of my, you know, to meet my requirements as far as the court went. NA I went to because I had this guy that was insistent that he wanted to fix me. And he was a very successful guy. He was actually a professional athlete. And we were dating for a while. He was a world champion in his sport, which I can't say. But this was forever ago anyway. So it's not like name recognition would probably be a thing. But he was a world champion in his sport. And we were dating, and he wanted me to be more like straight and narrow, and he was insistent that I must be addicted to these things because I was always out and with my friends and doing these substances. And so he was insistent, and I admit I really was into him. And you know, I went to NA, and he came with me. And but I knew that I wasn't, and I'm not above that. I'm not pretending, because, I've never felt that way in any situation. That's one place my mother did a really good job of raising me, is I never feel like I'm better than people when it comes to the superficial things. When it comes to stand up, I know that I'm just better than a lot of people at it because I'm just good at stand up. Like God, that's a gift that God truly did give me. And so anyway, my point is, I never lost my relationship with God, no matter what's ever been going on in my life. And it's not something that I've ever even seriously considered like trying to get away from, or felt like I had to shut off. Like, to me, God has always been the place where I can center myself, even when I'm at my worst, even when I'm not living right. And there have been times like that have been not to do with substances and not to do with the work I was doing at the time. There's just points where I don't feel like I'm living right. Right now, I honestly do. But my point is, and this is where we'll tie in to the guy that I was talking to just for a quick minute. And I know I might sound crazy to some of you guys when I tell you this story and the way that it went down. And some of you will be like, you're ignoring every red flag. And I'm always going to ignore every red flag when something inside me tells me to handle a situation a particular way. I mean, like, it's just the way that I'm built. Like, comedy, the world of entertainment is full of red flags. And I have looked past every single one of those. And yeah, I keep them in mind. I don't completely throw caution to the wind, but I don't stop because of a red flag. I continue to do what I'm doing. So what happened was, I was on Grindr not too long ago. This guy hits me up. He sends me a message that says that he knows who I am. He's seen me on Kill Tony, and that he was really attracted to me, and that he feels like because he said he's just been watching that recently, and he just came across me, so to speak, on on YouTube or whatever, and had seen me on Kill Tony, and the way he'd found me was because he was watching Aaron Belial stuff, which, if you remember Aaron Belial, I was hanging out with him for a while. We're friends. I haven't talked to him in forever, but we're friends. And he's coming to Phoenix in a couple months or a couple weeks, something like that. I won't be there. I have no interest in seeing anybody right now. I'm too busy in my own world, and I've been working on a project that's really important to me personally, and has nothing to do with the professional side of me. And one day I will make a video about it, but for right now, it's not something I want to get into. But it has been consuming a lot of my life, and it's part of the reason that I haven't been putting out a lot of videos lately, which I'm going to get back to being on a really good schedule about that probably tomorrow, to tell you the truth, because I'm going to record something later tonight. But anyway, my point is, so he says that he feels like he manifested like me popping up on his grid on Grindr. And so I'm a person that's also really big on manifestation, and there are some people that will tell you that that is like basically witchcraft type stuff. I don't believe that at all. I think that manifestations are, which I'm sorry if I'm bugging you guys with this, but what else am I going to talk about on my podcast? It's my thoughts. But I think that manifestations are you basically sending out prayers to God, and also the universe is involved as well, because things have to line up in order for you to get the things that you want when you're manifesting, and you have to put the work into them. It's not just a matter. But I've manifested a lot of things in my life. Every single thing that I've done, which I talked about, praying to God for drug dealers, or, drugs, more drugs, and then ending up with drug dealers for friends. Like, that's manifestation. I talked about the fact that, when I wanted more money, I would pray to God for that, and then I'd end up getting more money. And so I've always been big on that. And also meditation, even though I don't do it as much as I need to. But like, that's really helpful as well. And I can honestly say that right now, everything you see, whether you like it or not, or if you were to see my apartment, is a product of my manifesting. Like, even the YouTube channel, I just kept working on it, but also kept in mind what the actual goal was. And we're not all the way there, but like, I'm really happy with everything that's happened with my YouTube. And, the fact that Like I have a 2-bedroom apartment and I'm a single guy, you know, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, and I'm a single guy. And eventually I'm going to start looking at houses, and I'm not pretending everything's perfect, and I'm not pretending that I'm some baller, and I'm not pretending that my apartment is the Taj Mahal, but my apartment's cool and it's nice and it's exactly what I wanted as far as what I was looking for and the location that I was looking for it to be in. And so everything about my life has been a product of manifestation. And so when a person uses a word like that with me, to me that actually means something. And so when he said that, it did click off a quick. And then there were a couple other things he said in our quick conversation. But that day I was really busy. Like that day had to put out a video and I had to edit it. And I knew everything that I had to do that day. And even though I may seem every once in a while like I just always go with like what I want to do and I have bad impulse control, I really don't when it comes down to it. It's just I know when something's important and I know when it's not. And that day the most important thing was me editing that video. And so I told him, and I turned out to be right because that video ended up getting a bunch of views. And so I told him, like, you know, well, I'm going to be busy for the rest of the day, but if you want, we can hang out after 9 p.m. I was like, I'll hit you up around 9 p.m. And then he sent me a message because, you know, we were messaging back and forth and regular Grindr talk, like, what are you into? What do you like? That kind of stuff. Because obviously we were going to hook up. That's what the thing with that was, because he was very clear about the fact that he was very attracted to me. And that, you know, he was cool if I basically, and I don't, like, he didn't use these words exactly, but it's what he meant. He was cool if I just wanted to use him. Like, you know, if I just wanted him for a quick experience, he was fine with that. But he just wanted to experience me. And, but he also said some stuff like, you know, that he would be interested in dating me, or, you know, like he did want to get to know me, and he was very clear about that in those messages. And that too was very attractive to me, because I've had a lot of hookups on Grindr, and less lately because I haven't really been on it like that much because I've been so busy. So it's not like I've been like crazy on Grindr. There are points in my life where I have been, but I just haven't been recently. And when I am, I'm not ashamed of it. I do what I do. I'm a grown man. And so, but it hasn't been like that lately. And so the way he was talking, because I told you guys before, I'm not looking for a relationship, and I've accepted the fact that there's a good chance that I'll end up being alone. And I know I'll have like mini relationships here and there and, you know, like whatever, but I don't know that I'm meant to be in like a forever relationship. But I do know that anything I'm going to be in is going to be exactly what I want it to be, because I've been single for this long. So I don't have to be that person that just decides to settle. I'm not that kind of person that feels like, oh, well, because things haven't worked out this long, I might as well just drop my standards completely and take whoever will take me. I don't feel that way at all. The way I feel is, if I've been single and fine this long, and like I told you guys, one of my friends described me as always alone but never lonely. If I'm that okay with just being by myself, then I can just sit back, and if whatever happens drops in my lap and turns out to be what it is I actually want, then I'm cool with that. But I know that in order for that thinking to really work, then I also have to stay open too. Like, I can't just let my heart be hard or be overly cynical. And so this guy, you know, says these things, and I'm kind of thinking, yeah, that sounds interesting to me. Like, and you know, from his picture that he sent me, he was the kind of guy that I would definitely date. Like, I was attracted to him. Like, it wasn't one of those things though, and I don't say this at all to be shady or whatever anybody might think, but it wasn't one of those things where I was like, oh my God, this guy's so fucking beautiful. Which, you know, those have happened in my life for sure, but it wasn't like that, you know, but it was like, yeah, he's cute, and I would definitely be able to wake up to that, you know, like if we were to hang out a bit, that's a person that I could definitely be fully attracted to, you know? And so I end up hitting him up later that night, and I hit him up right around 9 o'clock, and it took him a little bit to get back, and it felt borderline flaky, but because I hit him up and then like right before 9, because I finished what I was doing right before 9. And I know that a lot of times people on Grindr are flaky. I am not. Like if I say I'm gonna do something, I'll usually end up doing it. And so it's very rare that I'll flake out. And if I do have to flake out, I'll message people and be like, okay, I'm not going to be able to hang out after all, maybe tomorrow or something if you're still open to it. But, I'm very good with communication that way. And so what happened was he ends up getting back to me a little bit after 9 and, well, like closer to 9:30, 10, something like that. And it turns out he doesn't live that far away from where I am. And he says he doesn't have a car. Earlier in the conversation, said he didn't have a job, which those are both definitely red flags and not at all ideal. But also, like, those aren't things that I would necessarily let get in my way, because while I have no interest and I'm not trying to at all fix anybody, if I were to meet the right person and they were to not be in the best position and I could help them work towards that, that's something I'm very open to. And I've always seen that as being a part of like a regular relationship, and he's closer to my age, but everybody has a story, and I figured I'd wait to see what he was like. And so when he got here, I told him, like, basically, if you make it to me, I'll give you a ride home. So I told him my address, and then he mapped it, and he said it was like a 15-20 minute walk. And the way he expressed that was, he was like, yeah, I definitely do that to go hang out with you. And then I was like, cool, hit me up when you're here, and I'll tell you exactly where I am once you get to my building or my complex. And so he does so, and he gets here, and we hang out, and the chemistry is good, like literally right at the door. The chemistry is good. Not to get too gay on you guys, but we start kissing right away. It was like what I like not a lot of chit chat at first, just like get to, because that part is that part, and I've always said, if you guys have been watching for a long time, that if that chemistry is there, I'm more likely to be able to go with everything else rather than the opposite. Like, because and I've tried it the other way before, where it's like, I really like the person's personality and whatever else, but the chemistry there, like when it comes to intimacy, the chemistry isn't there. Like, I can't make that work. I can make the opposite work, where like maybe the personality is not exactly what I want it to be, but the chemistry is good, then I can work with the personality. But if the chemistry is not good and the personality is great, you'll be a great friend, but it wouldn't be a dating situation or a relationship situation. And so but yeah, so then we're talking, and then he lets me know, because when he took off his shirt, I could tell that he either had been to prison or one of his friends had a tattoo gun when they were young. Because, in my generation, there's a lot of that. I don't think there's as much of that now. But when I was younger, I remember a lot of people that had never been to prison having prison tattoos because a friend had a needle and some Indian ink and decided to, and the other person wanted a tattoo, so they trusted them. I knew a lot of people that had tattoos when they were under 18, like when I was young, my friends, because a friend had done the Indian ink and the needle, and just given them a manual tattoo, basically. And so, so I knew that it had to be either of those two things. So afterwards, when we're talking, he ends up telling me that, he had been to prison for 13 years or whatever, but it was when he was super young. And so, he had spent a lot of his life there, basically, because he's not super old, but, it had taken up a fair amount of his life. And I'm cool with that. I mean, obviously, I've dated guys that have been to prison before, but I know that guys from prison come out one of two ways usually. Either they're, like, rehabilitated and, like, completely different than what got them, like, put into prison, or they're the kind of person that's full of excuses and really doesn't take accountability for their own behavior or the way their behavior will affect the world around them or the way that the world around them reacts to them. And so to them, everything just happens to them. You know, it's never a matter of their personal choice or the fact that maybe they weren't doing things right. It's always somebody else's fault. And so, but like I said, we had just hooked up, and you know, we were just talking about our, you know, like life experiences and stuff like that, just that kind of conversation. And I really didn't have an opinion at that point about him as far as that went, like thinking that he was maybe full of shit or whatever. But guess what ended up happening? But and it wasn't like in a terrible way that he was full of shit, but he's just full of shit, you know? I mean, like, that's what it turned out to be. And so, like, you know, we had, like I said, a really good time, and the chemistry was there, and he hung out for a couple of hours afterwards, but I had to get back to my actual life again. So I gave him a ride home, and in total, he probably hung out for about 3 hours, 4 hours, you know, where we hung out here. And then I went ahead and took him back to his place, and I came back home and worked on the stuff that I had to work on. I still had some stuff to take care of. And so, you know, that's the way it went. And we exchanged phone numbers. And then he started being like a little bit, like the vibe wasn't the same as far as him being like as, I guess, complimentary as he had been before, and being somewhat smitten, you know, which was the vibe he gave in the text messages before when we were on Grindr. And but you know, also I was like, maybe you're just tripping, maybe you just think it's like that. But what I think happened, and I know this is going to make me sound bad to think this way of another person, but I think what happened was that obviously we did have that bit of chemistry, but I also think that he thought that I was in some way going to be dazzled by him. And when he was telling me what his dreams are, because I've noticed that if somebody ever tells me what their dreams are and they attach dollar amounts to where it is they're trying to go, they usually want you to offer to help with that or to help them get closer to that goal. And there was a point where he mentioned that in order to do one of the things that he wanted to do, that he needed $2,000. And but he didn't at all ask me or make it seem like he was asking me. But this is the way my brain works, you know, like I said, I don't retain a lot of things because that's the way that I've trained my brain to work. But I do pick up on clues for sure when people say, and one day I will go further into like the way I train my brain and exactly how effective that has been, because it's the reason that I don't remember anything. If you ever pay attention, I always tell you guys, I remember very few things, and that's part of it, was just train my brain not to. And then also it's like something else my dad told me that made my brain work this way was he said that he has had so many experiences in his life, met so many people, and also had to like do so many things for work that his brain just kind of throws everything away. It's like cleans itself from all the stuff that he doesn't necessarily need to keep in there. And I'd like that affected the way that, you know, I allowed my memory to work, because now it's just the default setting. But so that too. But yeah, so he mentioned something about $2,000 for something he was trying to do or whatever. And then he mentioned something else, and he was like, but you know, without money, that kind of thing doesn't really happen, or there's no way to really do that. And while I told you guys that if I meet somebody and they're not established, like they don't have a car, which he didn't, they don't have a job, which he doesn't, that kind of stuff, I still don't count them out. And I can, like, if we were to actually be together, I could help him figure some things out for himself and get him to do what he needs to do in order to make those things happen for himself. And if he can make himself valuable to me, I can even give him, like, you know, some tasks he can do, because that's one thing that I really need to work on at some point, is getting an actual assistant. So if I were dating someone and they were able to do assistant type things for me and really trustworthy and really reliable, and also, you know, I was with them, then yeah, I'd be willing to help a person out because they'd be doing things that I actually need, things that are valuable to me, things that make me money, because the less time I'm doing these tasks that I don't necessarily need to be doing, I can be working on the things that I need to be working on and making money, creating more. And so I heard him when he was saying those kinds of things, but I really don't let them penetrate in any way, because it's just sort of like, I know I'm not giving this guy money no matter what right now, so I don't even need to know what these numbers are or what he's talking about. And like I said, it wasn't. I'm not saying he was asking, because maybe he wasn't saying it that way, but it's just something I noticed. And so he had mentioned something about having a clothing brand, like he was working on a clothing brand. Like, that's something that we were talking about. And that perked my ears because I need merch. Like, you guys, some of you have asked me if I have merch, and I do need merch. And so I have been trying to figure that situation out. And a few friends have offered to help, and started to help. And nothing against them, but we just haven't moved forward. And so I was thinking, like, maybe that's something, because my brain, if I'm thinking about somebody in any particular way, one, you got to jump in fast and just make shit happen. And two, I'll start figuring out where I can use you. And I mean that in the best way possible, but how you can make my life better. Because to me, I've been in every kind of relationship you can imagine at some point in my life. And one thing that I want the most is a truly, a truly mutually beneficial, actual, efficient, level up relationship where we both really understand each other as far as not getting in each other's way. Like, when it came to him telling me about what he's actually doing with himself and why he hasn't been working and what he's been working on as far as the clothing brand that he wants to start or kind of has started, and that kind of stuff, like that I did pay attention to, because it sounded like he was very motivated about that type of stuff, and it sounded like he was passionate about it. It sounded like the road he's taking is a lot like the road I took to becoming a stand-up, which was doing a lot of open mics and having to be out a lot. And his thing has quite a bit to do with nightlife, and I can respect all of that. And so if I were to ever date somebody that was in that world, it wouldn't bother me at all, as long as I knew that they weren't trying to mess around with other people, because I don't want to be in an open relationship and I don't want to be getting cheated on. Like, if I knew that they were just truly doing what they needed to do in order to get ahead in their career, as far, not like that, but as far as like having to be out, having to be social and that kind of stuff, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. So, like, to me, that's not a red flag at all. And actually, it's something I can be very supportive of, because I'm so busy a lot of times that I don't have time for somebody to hover over me or to hover over anybody. That's a big part of why I'm single, is because sometimes these guys, I'll meet them and they want to play these games where they, want to either be jealous of me or try to make me jealous of them. And it's just like, no, I'm not going to make you jealous of me, jealous over me. I'm not going to pretend that I'm talking to other people, or I'm not going to even feed that at all. Like, if you come at me with that, I'm going to give you a very blank and direct, I'm not cheating. I have no plans of cheating. I am with you. I don't want to talk to anybody else. I'm not on Grindr. I'm not, like, anything you think I might be doing, I'm not doing. And if I get asked where I'm at any particular time, I will tell you in detail where I'm at. I do not care. Like, if you're a jealous type person, you'll get rid of that fast with me, just because I am so transparent about, like, like when I was with my fiance, sometimes he would get weird with me, and I was like, I'll tell you exactly who's here. I'll get on FaceTime and show you who's here if you think that I'm doing something. Like, I'm definitely not in any way interested in anybody else, and I'm not trying to do any of that. And so and I would like to have that same trust with somebody else. Like, when I was with my fiance and I would go on the road, I wasn't constantly asking him where he was. In a way, I would ask him where he was as far as, just wanting to know his life, like, because since obviously I can't be with him, I'd be on the road for, like, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. And so I would definitely be like, what are you up to? What'd you do today? What have you been doing with yourself? That kind of stuff. But it wasn't like were you talking to another guy? Are there other people? It's like, ugh. When I was younger, I went through that for sure, but that's when you're young and you're like, but I just felt like we were engaged, and why would he want to be anywhere else when everything was said and done? Yeah, when I think back on it, there were, I guess you could say, red flags or things that might imply that he was cheating at different points. But it wasn't occurring to me at the time because that was so far from what my thinking was. But anyway, so like, that, because that was something that he was talking to me about, like what he does or what he wants to do with himself. And so, like I was thinking that exact thing, like, yeah, I could be with somebody that's like that as long as I don't feel like they're being weird or anything like that. And so, but also, like I said, he had specifically mentioned like that he manifested meeting me, or he felt like he had manifested meeting me. And he had mentioned that he believes in karma at a different point. Like when he mentioned why he went to prison, he was like, I feel bad about it to this day. I really do believe in karma. So I, try to be a good person because I realized that back then I was not. And it was like that kind of situation, And so there were things that he was saying that for me were like good things, like, okay, that's like a good guy or whatever. But if you ever pay attention to my like a lot of my tattoos, you'll notice, like, you should be able to tell that I'm the kind of person that would attach a particular meaning to manifestation, or a lot of the, I guess you could say, borderline metaphysical in the thinking, And so but he wasn't treating me like a manifestation after that, like, because if you manifest something, it's not just about manifesting it. Like, you have to be grateful for what it is you've manifested. And that's something I have no problem with, like, when it comes to me. Like, I'll tell you guys, like I said, I'm not trying to pretend my place is the Taj Mahal, but it's nice, and it's what I wanted, and it's where I wanted it to be, and it's the stepping stone to where I want to be next. And so there are times when I look around my apartment, I'll just be laying on the couch and I'll look around my apartment and I'll really, really just feel a really deep sense of gratitude. Because I remember when I was in a studio in MacArthur Park in LA, and I loved my studio, but it was still a studio. And I do realize the difference and the jump in going from being in a studio to, like, then my apartment in Austin was a really nice apartment. Like, I really did like that apartment. It was really cute, and it was really like everything modern and new. And before I got that apartment, I had never paid that much rent at any apartment I had been at, and so I remember being grateful for that too, and seeing that as, like, just a good thing, like, and there were points where I was making really good money when I was on the road, when I was in LA and working, but that's when I was working for Joe Coy or Gabriel Iglesias. And so I never really, like, made a lifestyle out of that, which might have been a mistake, because it's that fake it till you make it type thinking, but like, I never really made that my lifestyle, because I felt in a sense that I was living off the kindness of strangers. Like, as long as Joe Coy wanted to have me on the road, I would be making that money. As long as Gabriel Iglesias decided to have me on the road, I would be making that money. But as far as me being the one making that money, it wasn't me. So why should I put on like I'm living that lifestyle when really I'm not living that lifestyle, So I better stay in the studio and live within my means and what I know I can afford, if one of them or they respectively at different times had decided to stop working me, And so so that too. But my point is, like, when it comes to manifestation, you're supposed to be grateful and good to whatever it is you've manifested, and that's how you're worthy of more. That's how you basically continue to progress in your manifestations, is by being appreciative for the things that you have, and continuing to work and continuing to take the steps that you need to take to get to the next level. And so, but he wasn't being like that with me. Like, it was almost like he felt like he had met me and that he had maybe dazzled me, and then I was just gonna like be there for him. And it like there was a point where a guy hit me up on Grindr, and he's a guy that I regularly hang out with. Who, you know, I just met a while back or whatever. But he hit me up, and so I didn't want to just leave him hanging because, you know, I'm not at all committed to this guy or whatever, even though I am interested in seeing him. But I noticed that, because, you know, when you go on Grindr, because I was messaging the guy back just to be polite and be like, hey, like, you know, I'm checking something out right now. So for right now, I'm just, you know, and that's not the way I word it, but that's the way it is in my head. So it's just sort of like, you know, I won't be available for a while, and then you can choose to flake after that, because we all understand how Grindr works. You know, like sometimes you meet somebody, and so you'll tell the people on Grindr, like, you know, I'm going to be busy for the next while here, and then you just end up in a relationship with that person, and then you never talk to the person from Grindr again, or after you break up, you see if they're still on, like check your favorites. But I usually delete Grindr when I'm in actual relationships, so there's usually no chance of me catching up with these people again unless I just randomly run into them or see their profile again. But anyway, neither here nor there. But when I messaged that guy back, I noticed that the guy that supposedly likes me was on Grindr, and he had also changed his profile name to something that was a lot more aggressive, like letting people know that he was on the market and looking for fun. And I had a quick moment where I was like, that seems interesting. I'm going on Grindr to let somebody know that I am not going to be around. And his Grindr gives the impression that he is very much actively looking for fun. And so that turned me on. And like I said, he was on right then. So I knew he was on Grindr and actively looking for something. But keep in mind, we were texting and stuff like that. And so that made me not really like feel it, you know? And then I tried to play it off because I know that that's the new school version of being mature. Like, you're not supposed to crash out. You're not supposed to let a person know that they're not being your version, because that's considered toxic. Or if you do things that are even considered romantic, like send them flowers or something, that's considered love bombing. Or all the ways that when I was younger you would express that you were interested in somebody, like, you know, yes, cutting people off, and just like now that's isolating. Well, I'm not trying to isolate you from your friends, but I think that if you're into me, and I am very clear about the fact that I am headed towards monogamy if I'm going to be in a relationship. Otherwise, if I'm going to be open, I might as well not even be in a relationship and just be able to have fun. You do whatever you do. When we talk, we talk. We don't need to text, because texting is a waste of time if I'm not in any sort of relationship with you. And even with my good friends, I tell you guys that all the time. Like, I very rarely text or talk to my actual friends. I'm in a group chat with my two best friends on Instagram, which I've mentioned before. And, you know, like, they'll not hear from me for a day sometimes, or a couple of days, and then I'll just jump in and catch up and read everything and like things and, you know, laugh. And like, they're always great about it too, because they understand me. But anyway, so I just basically let him know that, like, you know, I thought we were getting to know each other. And there was also a point where I had invited him over, and he said he wasn't able to make it. And then he sent me a picture of him in a car smoking a joint. And it was like, you know, well, you just said you couldn't hang out with me, and now you're sending me a picture of you in a car, which you don't own a car, and you're smoking a joint. So obviously you wanted to hang out with somebody. And I didn't necessarily jump in my head to like, he's hooking up with somebody else or whatever. But the way that my brain worked was, supposedly we're supposed to be getting to know each other. And I was also very clear with him when I invited him to hang out that I'm going to be busy for the next week. Like, it's either I hang out with you tonight, and I didn't say it this way, of course, but like, I was just like, I'm going to be busy for the next week. So I was hoping that maybe we could hang out because, I legit, I'm not going to be able to see you for at least a week if you're not able to make it tonight. And so he said he wasn't able to make it, and I was cool about it. Like, it didn't bother me that he wasn't able to make it, but it did bother me a bit that he was able to hang out with somebody, and his excuse was because he was bummed out about something else that happened. And so that's why he wasn't able to hang out with me, and he didn't really feel like being around anybody. Oh, well, clearly you felt like being around somebody. And so so he texted me at a point, and I just told him that I really wasn't interested in texting anymore. I let him know about the Grindr thing, but like, full of shit, like, tells me that he didn't even remember. At first he was like, are you sure? Because when that happened, I blocked him on Grindr, and then I continued to text with him, but I was like, I don't need to know what's going on his Grindr. That feels obsessive or whatever. But because there is a part of me, and this is a red flag that I won't avoid, or won't tell myself not to pay attention to, but because of the way that he talked to me, and because he said that thing about knowing who I was, when people say things like that, it can be benign, but sometimes I know they're also trying to make it seem like there might be a way that they could possibly blackmail you or whatever. But he didn't realize, or doesn't realize, what an open book I am and how much I'll say things like this. And so I scrolled video, screen capped like our entire conversation, just like set it to record and then scrolled through it, so I would have record of the way everything went down if he ever tried to like say that our relationship went away other than the way that it went, or that I had misconstrued things, or that I was like saying things a different way than they actually were, and of course it had his new headline, his selling myself headline, on that thing, because that's the way Grindr works, your name's right at the top. So when I told him that, he was like, I don't even think that's me. I mean, like, are you sure it was me? And I was like, yeah, I'm sure it was you. And he was like, I don't think so, because I didn't change my screen name. And then I screen capped, like, took a quick picture of our conversation, or the beginning of our conversation, and then I circled where his screen name was and put an arrow on it, and I was like, oh, you don't think this is you? And some people think they're being smooth by lying to me, or lying like that, but to me, all it does is make me really not respect you. And so so I knew already that there would not be anything serious with this guy, but he was insistent that maybe he could help me with something. So I asked him, something about shirts, because we were messaging later about something else, and he had messaged me, and we talked about that a little bit. Like, that was in that same conversation. And then I had told him, like, yeah, if you want to help me with my shirts, that's something, because you can take as far as I go, you can take the personal relationship out of it. And if you're just able to do that. And so I told him, like, this is the way a pay structure could work. This is, where I want you to post it. And I can have like the fonts and the design sent over to you, and because he has made a few shirts of his own. And so that's the way we were talking at that point. And then so he starts being like, I guess you could say, romantic again at a point. And I was like, obviously, like, okay, well, whatever, if we're flirting, we're flirting, because like I said, we did have that good chemistry that one time. And but all this is happening fast, like in a week or so. But also, this is perfectly on schedule for me, because I need to figure out if you work, and I'm either going to drop you in or I'm going to chuck you out right away. So the faster we can get through all this, okay, maybe you messed up, because part of his thing was he thought that I wasn't interested in him, because I guess maybe I had seemed a little too busy, or like, like I wasn't really too enthused about texting back and forth with him, which isn't personal, but it's true. I don't like texting too much with anybody. Even if I'm dating them, I will, but I don't really love it. And so, you know, because it's just like, make your way over to see me. And especially if you're, you know, because I'm a grown man, he's a grown man. And so that's one thing I don't think a lot of these guys get about me is, yeah, I may say I don't have time to see you, but if you hit me up and you're like, I just need to do something about this. I'll be like, all right, well, you know, we'll carve out an hour or whatever, come by, you know, because I know how those things work. And I don't think anybody should have to walk around feeling frisky if they're seeing somebody or hanging out with somebody. So it's not even hanging out at that point. It's like, yeah, just come over, let's do what we do. And then you can be on your way and I'll finish my day or whatever, you know. And so, yeah, so I kind of understood what he was saying or whatever. So long story short, and just to wrap it up, what happened was the other night we made a plan for me to hang out, and I've been so busy with my other project and also with my videos because I still have been putting out some stuff and it takes me forever, like I told you guys. And so I was so exhausted, but I really, really wanted some off time and to just like unplug and hang out with him. And yeah, we were probably going to end up hanging out here, but there was a good chance that we'd go out for late night food or whatever, because again, you know, I've been putting my videos out in the evening, and so after 9 o'clock is usually when I'm down to hang out. He had an event he had to go to that was like work related or what he wants to do related, and he had sent me like text messages or screenshots of like them telling him what it is they wanted to do and what their vision was and stuff like that. And it seemed like a good opportunity for him. And like I said, with stand-up being what it is, I understand, like, sometimes you just have to be around. So I'm not the kind of person that's going to be like, well, are you being paid to be there and whatever else? So when, you know, we decided to hang out, he was like, and I don't know, because I've got this event on Sunday, so I don't know if I'm going to be there, like how late I'm going to be there or what I'm going to be doing. And so I was very clear with him and told him, I legit, like that's the word I used. I was like, I legit do not care how late it is that we hang out. Like, I don't care. Be as late as you want. Just hit me up when you're ready to hang out. So, and I told him at that point, I was like, I'm going to be busy for most of the day anyway. So like, for me, kind of like the implication, even though I didn't say it in so many words, it was sort of like the later the better as far as I go. And yeah, some people may see that as like booty call type thinking, but for me, that's just the way my life works. Like a lot of times if I go out on a date with somebody or hang out with them, it's going to be after 9, you know, midnight, like 11 for me to hang out with somebody. You know, maybe we could go get some Denny's or something like that, or just, you know, even fast food, or hang out at my place and watch TV or whatever, you know, hang out, well, usually at my place to hang out because I want to, you know, and that's the other thing, he didn't have his own place. And so, yeah, but, you know, I like hanging out at my place anyway, my dog's here. And so, so that was the thing, right? So he hits me up at 9:30, and I was doing the chat with you guys because this was on Sunday night. And so I was doing the chat with you guys, and he hit me up, and I was like, yeah, I'm still busy right now, because he was like, are you ready? And I was like, no, I'm still busy right now. And he was like, 10:30, like, you know, I can leave, I can go at 10:30. And so he says, okay, and he's like, you know, but I didn't drive out here. And I'm in my head thinking, like, you already told me you don't have a car, so it doesn't matter that you didn't drive. I assumed I was going to pick you up anyway. And then he was like, I'm in downtown Phoenix, which that's like maybe 15, 20 minutes, like late at night, but I don't even think like 15, you know. And I was like, you know, I didn't say it at all in a callous way or whatever, in a dismissive way, but I am very clear with people about the fact that, yeah, I don't care. Like, if I want to hang out with you and I say I'm going to pick you up, I don't care where you are. I'll pick you up. And so, so I said that in a nice way, you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, just, you know, wherever you're at, I'll go pick you up. Just let me know after, you know, and so, he was like, okay. And, you know, he was like supposedly excited about hanging out and stuff like that. And so, he sends me another message that just says, I'll let you know where I'm at, or I'll let you know then. And so I like was chatting on the what's it called in the live chat and getting those text messages from him at the same time, so I really wasn't able to be that attentive or whatever, which I'm great with text messaging when there's a plan because we're just trying to figure out a plan. And so what happens is it's like 9:45 p.m. I send him a text message because I'm about to jump in the shower. I just finished doing some other stuff that I had to do. I had to cut up some chicken because I've been boiling chicken for my little dog because she's been on the bland diet. And so I had finished boiling chicken and I chopped it and I straightened up my place because I knew that we were going to come hang out here. And I'm getting ready to jump in the shower, and I send him a message that it just says, because I wanted to be clear with him because I didn't know if he thought I meant that I could be there by 10:30 or I was leaving at 10:30. So I just sent him a message just to make sure I was completely clear. I'm going to be able to leave my place at 10:30. So if you just send me a message with an address or where I'm supposed to pick you up, I'll go ahead and head your way as soon as I get out of the shower. So at 10:26, I end up getting a text message that says, I'm in Scottsdale, I'm not driving. And Scottsdale is probably between 20 and 30 minutes late at night like that. So, and still not a problem. Like in my head, I'm thinking, I already told this guy, I don't care what time we hang out and I don't care where you are, I'll pick you up. Like it's not a thing for me. Like that's what he's not getting, but I'm still not upset. And like constantly reminding me that you don't have transportation, I got it. I got it the first time you said it. Actually, it came in louder than I wanted it to when you first said it. So I just sent him a message that was like, yeah, I'll pick you up. Just send me your address. And I needed to go get cigarettes, and that's like headed that way anyway, towards like downtown Phoenix or wherever I was going to be going. That's towards where I go get my cigarettes is down that way anyway. So, I leave because I'm just expecting him to text me the address to where he's at. And then I get to the place where I buy my cigarettes and I haven't got a text message from him. So I sent him a text message at that point, and I was just like, do you not want to come, or am I not picking you up? Something like that, And then he doesn't respond. And my original cigarette place was closed. It's a Circle K, which is usually 24 hours, but they were closed for cleaning, which is rare, but it happens. And so, I went to another Circle K. And when I got to the other Circle K, I tried to call him, instead of texting. And keep in mind, this is probably 15 or 20 minutes after I had messaged him. And so I try to call him, and then I send him a text message. And at this point, I am kind of annoyed. And I'm like, because this is well after I was supposed to leave him. So, I was supposed to, or hear from him. I was supposed to hear from him at 10:30. And then, it's like 10:45 or closer to there. And then I try to call him, and then I sent him a text message that said, try to call, it went straight to voicemail. And then he sends me back, because I'm busy. And then that's where it just was for me, I did send him a message telling him, and then I talked to him a little bit later and just told him, there's no way that, I know what I've seen of you now, and I know that, that that's cool for you if that's the way you are, but that doesn't work for me and my life. And so, because he also tried to be full of shit. There was a point where he asked me why I left the house if he didn't give me an address. And it was like, well, because that was the plan. So I just assumed that you would send me the address, and because I needed cigarettes. So it just made sense for me to leave, since we had just talked maybe 45 minutes before, and you had said the plan fully was, and then he tried to be I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. There was a plan, and you flaked. And, I was bothered, and not because I don't know him. So it wasn't like I had feelings for him, or, and the chemistry, like I said, was good, but it wasn't like it was some kind of love at first sight, and I was just so sprung on him now and whatever else. But I did feel like I'm really trying to be cool about the fact that you're a person that does not have a job, does not have your own place, and does not have transportation. And you're also busy quite a bit, but you're like making it difficult for me, and we don't even know each other. So it's just not gonna work. Like, I'm not gonna try this, because I'm sure at that point when he did call me, because he was like, I just wasn't ready or whatever. When he texted me again, and it was like, I just wasn't ready or whatever, because I'm a reasonable person and I know things can change or whatever. If he had said something, like if he had texted me back immediately when he said he was in Scottsdale and I said like, send me the address and I'll go pick you up. If he had messaged me something like, I won't be ready for an hour or so, or, I might be another hour or so, then that would have been completely acceptable to me. But to completely not answer and then send me, I'm busy, after I try to call you, because I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt and assuming that you're either not getting text messages or you're not paying attention to your phone, which I know can happen when you're out. I've done that before when I've been performing or hanging out at open mics or whatever. I've missed messages, and then somebody calls me and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even realize. Like, my ex-fiance used to do that all the time with me, and I was always like ready to answer his call because he was my fiance and I was very into him and I wasn't trying to play any kind of game or whatever. But it just felt like a game. And I'm sure if I had said at that point that I was ready to pick him up, if I had pulled it like, I'm so glad you finally messaged me. Can I go pick you up? Or do you still want to hang out? I'm sure that would have been an option at that point. But I already felt like it was a disrespectful way to handle it. And I know that with the couple of things that we had dealt with, because I give you guys the what's it called, but there was like a back and forth we had on text message a couple nights before when it was dealing with that Grinder thing, and him still insisting that he didn't remember changing his screen name on Grinder. But I'm on Grinder. I have a Grinder. So I know that's not something you do by accident, and it is like a process. You have to go through the editing and stuff like that. So it's not just like you don't forget you did it. Like, you did it. That's what it is. And so I just felt like he was insulting my intelligence, and that's what I had to tell him at a point. It was just like, yeah, I just feel like you're insulting my intelligence. Like, I'm not stupid. It's not like I'm not on Grindr too. It's not like I don't know how these things work. And then, pulling that like, I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. Well, what was the misunderstanding exactly? But I know he's like, from the little bit that I knew about him, I knew he wasn't ready to have that conversation, because that would take actual honesty. And who knows if he was on Grindr that night as well. For all I know, when I took extra long because I had to get ready and stuff like that, because, I've been so busy working on everything and stuff like that, I wanted to take a really, really good shower and like make sure that I was dressed and my hair was done and I didn't have to wear a cap or whatever like that. Like I was gonna like hang out with him, and so I didn't want to look like a scrub or whatever. And so, but like, who knows, maybe in that time he ended up finding somebody. Cause when I talked to him, it sounded quiet. And if he was at an event, I don't know how an event is that quiet. Maybe he went off somewhere else. But, either way, it just wasn't handled the way that I would want somebody to handle me. And I've gotten to those ages where if a person really gives me that many actual definite signals, because the other stuff, the red flags, I can overlook. But the actual signals, I can't overlook. They are what they are. So stay unbothered.